Welcome to Curious Kids Every Day. I'm Josh. How are you doing today? It's so good to hear from you. Hey, I have a question for you. Does your family ever play video games? Now, our family doesn't play them all the time, but we do really enjoy them. We love racing games and puzzle games. I love sitting on the couch with my boys and trying to figure out really complex puzzles with them. It's really fun. We try to make it a family thing where we're all doing it together. If you play video games, which one is your favorite? Have you ever wondered how your favorite video game was made? How did the people who made it start from nothing and create all the characters and the movement and the levels and the tracks? It just seems impossible. But game developers do it all the time. So, how is it done? Let's imagine you've got the job of making your very own video game. Where do you even start? Well, the first step is called the concept stage. This is where game designers come up with the main idea. What kind of game will it be? What will the story be? And what will the player do? It could be a fast racing game, or a puzzle-solving adventure, or even a game where you explore a really big open world. It could be a game where you mine for things and then build things. Now, sometimes this concept stage is done by a bunch of people working together to come up with a cool idea. But sometimes games are developed by just one person. Those games can take a really long time. But if you have an idea and you don't have the money to hire other people to help you with your idea, sometimes it's your only option. Now, after the concept stage, the developer might start working on something called concept art. This is where artists sketch the characters, the places you'll visit, and the items you might collect. This gives a clear picture of what the game will look like before it's actually built. Sometimes it helps if you can just visualize something on a page rather than keeping it all in your head. So even if it's not going to be the final artwork, just having something sketched out so you know what you're thinking about can be helpful. Once you know what kind of game it's going to be and have a rough idea of what it's going to look like, the next idea is the most important one. It's time for something called programming. Can you say programming? This is where the game starts to come alive. Think of coding like giving your game a giant list of super specific instructions. Computers can't guess what you want them to do. They only know exactly what you tell them. One of the most common ways to give instructions is with something called an if-then statement. Can you say if-then? It's like telling the game, if the player presses the jump button, then make the character leap into the air. You have to tell your game very specific things in order for those things to happen. Another example might be, if the Mario Kart runs over a banana, then spin the cart around. Anything you interact with in a game has something to do with an if-then statement. If I open this treasure chest, then I collect an item. Different games use different programming languages to write these rules. For example, computer games often use C++, or C# or Python. Games for phones might use Java or Swift. And there are also ready-made toolboxes for game developers too, that make it so you don't have to start from scratch anytime you want to make a game. These are called game engines. Can you say game engine? Some of the most popular ones are called Unity and Unreal. Game engines make it easier to create a game, but they also kind of limit the game you can make. If you build an entire game from scratch, well, you can make it anything you want it to be, right? But that requires that you know a lot about coding. Game engines make it so you don't need to know quite as much to get started. Some engines even let you make games that work on computers and consoles without rewriting all the code. That means your game could run on a computer or on Nintendo or PlayStation. Thanks to all these tools, making a game today is way easier than ever before. But what's the difference between making a game for a computer and a game for a video game console? Well, computers can be upgraded with new parts and they have lots of different settings, so the game has to work with many different setups. On the other hand, consoles like Nintendo or PlayStation or Xbox are all built the same way. So once a game works for one Nintendo Switch, well, it's going to work for every Nintendo Switch. But just because I have a computer and you have a computer, that doesn't mean that a game is going to run the same way on both of our systems. Your computer might be much more powerful than mine and be able to handle way nicer graphics. Years ago, making a video game was way harder. Developers had to create everything from scratch and work within the limits of very small memory and slow processors. If your parents are close to my age, you should ask them to show you some of the video games that we had when we were kids. They are much different than the games we have now. But even though the tools were much harder to work with, good developers learned to create amazing games with them. Sometimes having limitations can inspire you. It's like if you had just one piece of paper to draw a picture. Now, could you make more pictures if you had more paper? Well, sure. But if you knew that you only had one piece of paper to draw on, I bet you'd think really hard about exactly what you wanted to draw, wouldn't you? That's kind of how older video games were. The people who made them had much less to work with, and they had to think really hard about how to fit everything they wanted on their one piece of paper. Now, once the games work, playtesting is super important. Testers play the game over and over to find bugs. A bug is another way of saying that you're finding problems that make the game act in a way that it shouldn't. We call them bugs because they act a lot like real bugs. They're annoying and they're kind of hard to get rid of. Fixing those bugs before releasing the game makes sure that players have a smooth experience when they're playing. Well, once the game is programmed and tested, it can finally be released for players to enjoy. Sometimes, updates come out later to add new features or fix anything that was missed. Depending on the game and the number of people developing it, it can take anywhere from a year to 10 years to develop a game. One of my favorite games to play took 8 years to create. You have to really love creating video games in order to do it, because it's such a long and complex process. So, the next time you pick up a controller or sit at your computer to play a game, you'll know the huge amount of creativity, teamwork, and coding magic that went into every single movement and level of that game. It really is amazing. If you were to create a video game, what kind of video game would you make? Why don't you get a piece of paper and a pencil and draw the first level of the game you'd make? All right, let's have a quick quiz. What's the word we use for coding a video game? We call it programming. Which one of these is not a programming language we talked about today? C#, Python, or Game Build X? Yep, it's Game Build X. I just made that one up. What is the name of the special tool that can be used to create a video game? Remember, there's something that helps so you don't have to start the game from scratch. It's called a game engine. Are all Nintendo Switch systems built the same way? They sure are. That's why building a game for a console like Nintendo Switch is different than building one for a computer, because computers can be built with different parts, where all the different Nintendo Switch systems are built using the same parts, with the same programming inside of them. Let's play true or false. True or false, game testers try to break the game on purpose to find bugs. That is true. True or false, the first video games had realistic 3D graphics. That is false. The first video games were just tiny little pixels on the screen. True or false, you can't make games by yourself at home. That is false. Anybody can learn how to code from their house. You can use game engines and do all kinds of things to build something in your own bedroom. Would you rather design all the characters for a game or write all the code? I am really interested to hear your answers because I think it tells me a lot about what kind of person you are. If you're the kind of person who would rather design all the characters, well, maybe you're more of a creative person who likes to draw things. But if you would rather write all the code, maybe you're more logical and you want to decide how all the different if-then statements work and how to write in a coding language. I don't think there's a wrong answer here. It's just whichever one sounds more fun to you. Okay, so how much do you know about video game systems? I want to find out. I'm going to name a system and you tell me, is that video game system real or did I just make it up? Is the PlayStation 3 a real video game system? Yep, it sure is. What about the Nintendo Switch? Is that a real video game system? Yes, it is. What about the Pixel Master 3000? Nope, I just made that one up. Ooh, what about an Xbox Series X? Yep, that's a real system. How about the Game Sphere? No, I just made that one up too. Okay, one more. What about the Sega Genesis? Yep, that was a system when I was a kid. Okay, one more. I'll do one more. What about the Super Nintendo? Yep, that was another system when I was a kid. That was the second Nintendo system that came out. Making video games is like building a whole new world from scratch. You need ideas, art, code, and lots of testing. And with today's tools, more people than ever can create games for others to enjoy. Hey, maybe one day you'll create a video game. What kind of question do you think we'll ask tomorrow on Curious Kids Every Day? I can't wait to find out. So until then, keep asking questions and stay curious, kids. And for all the grown-ups listening, thank you so much for telling other parents about this show. I really appreciate it. Please visit CuriousKidsEveryday.com to get a free printable with activity ideas that don't involve screens. Those are the best kinds of adventures to have. That's CuriousKidsEveryday.com. See you tomorrow.